All right, what's happening, everybody? So, update. Forgot to mention this. Anytime I cut out repairs in veneer, I always take my glue and I run my glue right around the edge of all my little cutouts where there was a problem in the veneer. Then I just take my finger and I kind of wipe it into the edge of the veneer, let it dry, and then sand off any excess before I start filling these patches in the veneer. Whatever I use, whatever kind of filler I use in here, filler is going to have moisture in it. It's going to have water in it, right? Or it's going to have something wet in it until it dries. And the way that it dries is that moisture is going to go into the air, but it's also going to go into the wood. So the last place I want any moisture to go is into the edge of this real paper thin veneer, because it could soften the glue under the veneer and cause that old bubble to creep. It'll creep into the veneer, and then you'll have a new bubble, right where the old bubble was, next to your repair. You'll have a nice flat repair, and then you'll have a bubble that goes all the way around it. So I use the glue as like a moisture barrier to keep the edge of the veneer from sucking that moisture in. That should protect it and keep it from lifting or keep it from softening the glue that's holding the veneer down. The truss rod, new truss rod is in, shorter truss rod, centered truss rod, and you can see my spline, and man, it really stiffened up this headstock and this back end of the neck here. This end of the neck is the smallest, thinnest part of the neck. So this guitar kind of had like a roll off on the wrong end. But putting that spline in really stiffened that up a lot. So I'm very happy with how that came out. The truss rod is set perfectly straight, and it just looks great. The last notch was deeper than it needed to be, so when I routed out for the spline, I had to go deeper than I really wanted to go because of this step. I'll pull this out and I'll show you guys the truss rod if you have never seen one. So see how the truss rod kind of steps down and steps down again from this line right here? So it steps down here, and then it steps down again here. So right where it's stepping down is the thinnest part of the neck. So, running that channel too deep, thins the wood out so much right there at the neck that, it's like you could just poke a pencil through it. It was so thin. But with the new spline in there, now I got a little bit more beef there, that I don't have to worry about the truss rod, because the truss rod is going to want to bend backwards, right? Because the strings are trying to pull the neck this way, so the truss rod is going to go bend that way. So that puts all the pressure from the truss rod right on that low point right there, trying to push the neck backwards against the pull of the string. And that part of the guitar where it's pushing just happens to be the thinnest part of the neck. So we got that stabilized now. I feel way better about it. I feel really good about this fit. This is a good fit. Some people will tell you to put some silicone in under your truss rod so that it doesn't rattle. Okay, a better piece of advice would be to cut the truss rod channel the right size so that the truss rod fits in there. Not, you don't want extra space in there. There's no rattle if there's no room for the truss rod to move. It can't rattle because there's no room for it. If you put silicone in under your truss rod, it's a cushion for the truss rod. So it's like, you know, like stuff it with a pillow before you put your truss rod in there, because silicone is the same thing. It's just, it's too pliable. So when your truss rod is pushing against the silicone has to compress before the neck will start to move. And if it can compress, then that means you're not getting anything contact to contact, holding it where you want it, you know, where your truss rod is trying to hold your neck. Now you have this cushion in there, so your neck can move. Don't use silicone. Just make your slot the right size for the truss rod, like that. Make it fit in there so that it doesn't fall out. It should just be a nice snug, just a snug fit, not tight, because if you push in a truss rod in a channel that's too narrow, the flat part of your neck is going to spread apart, and then that flat part is going to go like this. So then this part of your neck right here is going to open up, and it's going to have an arch to it. And then when you try to put your fretboard on there, your fretboard is going to be clamped onto that. It's a radius. Your fretboard is going to be clamped onto that radius, and that means it's trying to split your fretboard by clamping it here and here over a radius. You're going to have cracks that are going to start to walk their way down your fretboard. I still have to notch for new binding. When I re-radius this fretboard, I'm going to lose a little bit of thickness, and it's got this goofy thing going on right here. Right here. See how the binding is like as wide as the fretboard here, but then when you go over here, you can see the fretboard right there. So it's like really, really thin right there. It's too thin. It doesn't look right. And I'm just going to make it even thinner by radiusing this fretboard. So we're going to put a new binding on there. And plus, you know, this is old and cracked and all beat up. So we're going to put a new binding on there, and that binding is going to go down and overlap onto the neck itself. To make that happen, I got to put a notch in the neck. I pulled the binding off of one side of this. So here's what it's going to be. Of course, this is going to be an exaggeration, but you're going to have this edge like that. Then I have to notch this part of the neck out so that the binding can sit flush up against the side of the fretboard and flush into the notch that's on the neck for the binding. This guitar also had this weird thing going on right here. This is, you know, another great reason for me to pull the binding off of this. See right here? And then when the fretboard was on there, I'll show you. You got this weird paint stripe between the binding on the fretboard and the binding around the edge of the guitar. I don't think I've ever seen that before. It should be binding and binding, not binding and then paint and then binding. It should be binding to binding. So that, it looked funny to me from the beginning, but if I cut a new notch, and I'll probably use that as my depth, for how far down onto the neck I go, just so that when I run the new binding, I know that I don't have any like stupid paint line between the binding and the binding on the fretboard. So that would look stupid if you ask me. But we got more sanding done. Now it's important that I sand the finish off the edge of this guitar before I pull this binding out. If I try to pull the binding out while the edge is finished, I will pull chips of finish off with the binding. Some of those chips of finish could pull pieces of wood off the guitar, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to have all like a filler edge all the way around. That's not, you know, I don't mind if it's in a couple spots, but if it's filler all the way, filler, it's not professional. It's not a solid finish that, you know, I want wood to wood or binding to wood. I don't want binding to filler to wood. I don't want that, right? You know, filler is okay for little tiny spots. It's good for that, but I won't use it for anything bigger. Like I'll use it on these because they're so super shallow, right? But there's other places where there's all the screw holes. I will plug every screw hole in this guitar, every single one. I took the screw out for the strap, and the screw felt like if I just cranked it in a little more, it was going to strip, right? So I checked the other one. I'm like, well, is that one also going to be loose? So I turned that one a little bit, and that one felt okay, but that one felt like it was going to strip. So how many times has the screw been in and out of that hole? The answer is, I don't know. But if I drill it and plug it, then I got brand new wood to work with, and I don't have to wonder about, I hope that screw's going to hold, or do I got to put a longer screw, you know, a 3-inch drywall screw in there to hold that thing in there? Not what I want to do, right? So I'm gonna drill and plug every single hole, especially those holes back there. For the tuning machines, they were really bad. I've got a couple of holes in the top from where I was working on it, and I will plug those, even though I'm going to run veneer across this new headstock, and we're going to change the shape of that. I think that was all I got. It's binding. So after I sand all the finish off of the edge of this guitar, I will go around it with my iron to soften the binding and soften the glue before I peel it off. So that way I know I'm not going to take any chunks of wood with me. So I'll show you that after we're done. And very soon we're going to have this fretboard glued back on there in one condition or another. All right, that's all I got for this one, guys. Peace.